Welcome back to another episode of the Top Attorneys of North America podcast. Today, we're honored to bring you an in-depth conversation with a litigating veteran whose career spans more than 50 years and whose practice has crossed state lines, a wide spectrum of legal disciplines, and both private and public service. Our guest today is Thomas J. Fleischmann, founder of the law offices of Thomas J. Fleischmann and Associates in St. Charles, Illinois. Tom has built a distinguished career with admissions to the bar in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and multiple federal courts, even the United States Court of Appeals. His practice has encompassed complex litigation, including product liability, insurance coverage, civil rights, professional negligence, commercial law, and federal criminal defense. Tom, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Tom, let's start at the beginning. Please give us a little bit about your background and what first drew you to the study of law back when you were earning your degree at Boston University School of Law in the early 70s.
Well, I went to BU for the purpose of, at that time, I wanted to do criminal defense work. And at that time, they had one of the first kind of premier clinical practices there where you actually had hands-on experience. I mean, my third year, I actually tried 3 or 4 jury trials, which was basically unheard of. And I don't know if that still goes on today, but it was a unique situation to be put in, and was an enjoyable time to go to law school. And the individuals and the professors there were at the top.
I've never heard somebody in law school trying cases before like that, so I do think that is very unique. After graduating, you went on to become admitted to the bar in multiple states. I see Ohio, Michigan, Illinois. I see United States Court of Appeals. That's an impressive range. What motivated you to seek such a broad admission, and how has that shaped your perspective as a litigator?
Well, coming out of law school, and as anybody who's went to law school knows, your last year is a big push to try and find a place to practice. Fortunately, like in November of that year, I had an offer to be a public defender in Dayton, Ohio. So consequently, at that time, the multi-state was just beginning, and I was a resident of Michigan. I mean, that's where I was born and raised.
Mm.
So I figured I'd take the Ohio bar, and then the Michigan bar was a month later. And of course, no one is smarter than, a first year law student or a person coming out of law school. So I took that position, took those bars, and it was very fortunate because, as it turned out, in September of after graduating, I was told that I didn't have a job in Dayton, Ohio. The Nixon had cut out the Safe Street funding, and I was funded out of a job. So I ended up getting in my car, well, actually my mother's car, borrowed that, and drove around Michigan and stopped at prosecuting attorneys' offices and knocked on the door and said, "Are you looking for an assistant prosecutor?" I ended up in Kalamazoo speaking to the prosecuting attorney, and he said, "Well, I don't have a job, but the guys down in Jackson do." And so I ended up getting the car, drove to Jackson, interviewed with the prosecuting attorney, Bruce Barton. And Bruce said, "This is on a Thursday. When can you start?" And I said, "Monday." And so I ended up in Jackson, Michigan, and that's where I started the practice. Fortunately, I passed the Michigan bar and the Ohio bar at that time. So in Jackson, I started as an assistant prosecuting attorney, and then the next step was I joined a firm that had what was doing contract public defender work, and consequently, in Jackson at that time, the law was that any crime that was committed within the prison system was prosecuted in Jackson. So I ended up getting a wide range of cases. And then from there, I went to a small firm. It was a medium-sized firm, meaning there were 4 people in it. And then I was fortunate to get a uh, an offer of a position with the United States Department of Justice with the criminal division, the organized crime section, and they assigned me to Chicago. And that's how I ended up in Chicago. And part of by that time, I had enough years of practice that I got reciprocity into the Illinois bar, which is really the only bar that I'm a member of right now. But, I'm a member of, admitted to the United States Supreme Court and various district courts and circuit courts throughout the United States. So that's kind of the long story short, I guess.
That's perfect. Very interesting. I love the fact that you literally went door to door. I think that's excellent. You're and if we fast forward a little bit, present day, your practice spans a wide range of complex litigation. When I was on your website, I saw product liability, insurance coverage, professional negligence, commercial law. What's the common thread that connects these areas for you?
Well, the common thread was I want to be a trial lawyer. And if it, I know in this day of, specialization, uh, it, when I was starting to practice, I enjoyed just different things. And uh, when I came out of the department, we had done, white collar organized crime cases. I ended up with a firm that was doing a lot of commercial litigation. We were representing steel companies and also just products liability type cases. And so that was what I was interested in. And then later, as things changed, we got into uh, medical malpractice cases because the firm that I started, we represented doctors and hospitals. So it was just kind of what was going on at the time, what was kind of the hot practice. And so, in that same period, I would do criminal defense work in federal court. So it was just what was interesting at the time and what was the need. I mean, from that to representing Kraft Foods in a case down in Pennsylvania. So it was varied, but it was if you're a trial lawyer, you should be able to get up and basically learn enough and convince a jury as to the righteousness of your client's claim. So that's what I've tried to do.
Yes, sir. You mentioned, if I can go back to a little further back in your answer, you've done work in federal criminal defense. How does representing a defendant in a federal case differ emotionally, strategically, technically from your civil litigation work?
Um, there is a common thread. You see, whether if you're in federal court, whether it's civil or criminal, the criminal cases, you're going up against the government work or government attorneys who are very well qualified and very well prepared. The cases are longer. Always, when I was doing state court work, you try a case in 3 or 4 days. Federal court, it's just more complex and a higher level of attorney overall. I mean, I don't mean to diminish state court prosecutors, but the people in the U.S. Attorney's Office, especially in a place like Chicago, they're at the top of their game. They are very intelligent people. So,
Yes, sir. It forces you to be at the top of your game as well.
yeah.
Excellent. And you told me that you have a very vast background. You've been a partner at other Chicagoland firms and then later founded your own practice in St. Charles. What did you take from your large firm experience that helped you build your own successful firm?
Well, the firms that I was with, especially when we left one of the larger ones, was I was getting referrals from other lawyers, and the firms that I was with, we didn't have any kind of a strong commercial or a corporate practice. We didn't have tax practice, and that was an advantage for me because a lawyer from, say, a major firm could have a conflict. He'd refer him to me. He would know that there's no way we're going to steal that client because we never had the breadth of what can be a large firm can give them. So that was a real advantage to me. And consequently, that's kind of how I developed my practice was referrals from other lawyers that I had met over a period of time or tried against them, and they saw I was no threat to steal a client. And, so it was very fortuitous just the way it worked out, and that's kind of what I've carried through. Uh, I'm not a threat to say a person who does real estate or uh, an estate practice. That's just not what I do.
That's quite a compliment for other lawyers, law firms to tap you on the shoulder like that. And I know running your own firm, it's more than just being an attorney. It takes leadership, mentorship, business sense. How do you balance being both an attorney and an entrepreneur?
The interesting question because I guess everybody has weaknesses, and probably mine is the biggest one is probably not the greatest marketer in the world. I mean, I've had cases that come to me, and it's kind of a joke, I guess, among sole practitioners, which people say there's only two ways to get a case. One is to go on trial, and the other one is to go on vacation, because it seems like when you're tied up, that's when the phone rings. And so I've just been fortunate as to how that's worked out. So
Yes, sir. I mean, 50 years, that's nothing to shake a stick at. What's one lesson that time has reinforced for you about practicing law with integrity, persistence?
I think the one main thing is to have a curiosity, and if it isn't fun, I think I would stop practicing. The As it just continues on. I mean, it's an intellectual challenge. The cases that come in, uh, the individuals you meet. Yeah, and fortunately, I'm at a point where do I have to take every case that walks in the door? No, I really don't. Uh, so if there's a connection with a client, and or if there's a cause that I think is worthwhile, th then I'll get involved. So, but after 50 years, somebody once said everybody deserves a lawyer, but they don't necessarily deserve you. So, and I know that that's kind of a counterintuitive thing as to how to be an entrepreneur, but uh, it's been successful to me. I think that allows me to give me the personal time for the client, because a lot of these cases, especially if you're on the other side, there's a large firm and there this and that. You have to kind of balance how much you can actually charge a client. I mean, I'm going to do a good job regardless of that. And if it means that I write off hours, whatever it is, to do a good job, that's important. Fortunately, what I've found recently, and this is over the last 15 years or so, I've been dealing with a lot of businessmen and women, and the nice thing is to give them the alternatives and say, well, we can do this and we can do that. Here's what it's going to cost you. Here's what our benefit is going to be. And it's really a cost benefit analysis with individuals who are involved in litigation. I mean, litigation now is just so extremely expensive. And business people have to have the choice. And one of the things I always offer is that, I'll meet with you and talk strategically what we can do. And I don't charge you for that. We set out a plan and then we'll execute the plan. But drafting that plan for you, that's just what I do. And then you have to make the decision and deal with the consequences. There might be a time when somebody would say, Tom, I just can't afford that. And I recognize that's the downside. Or Tom, this is really an important case. It's a bet the ranch thing, go all out. But those have to be decisions by individuals, by the client. So that's what's going on with me right now.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer. A lot of passion. One thing I did find in my research, you're very client-centered, and you did allude to that in your answer as well. And that'll bring me to my next question. Is there a case or a client that stands out in your memory as a turning point, something that truly shaped the way that you practice law today?
You know, it's a good question. I mean, a whole bunch of things pop into your mind as to uh, cases that shaped your. I mean, the goes way back. I mean, the very first case I had as a criminal defense attorney, a public defender, was a retrial of a first-degree murder case in Michigan, and it came back from the Michigan Supreme Court. I ended up trying it and won it. I mean, and that kind of gave me a real kickstart in a small community, and it also gave me the feeling that yeah, I can do this. And then coming to Chicago and being involved with the guys at the strike, and they was men and women at the strike force. We had two women there, and it was an experience of seeing the practice at a higher level, just what was done because there was enough time to develop a case, and that's what we had to do. So those types of things kind of come down to what was it? Well, you look back and it was the preparation. I know everybody talks about preparation, but there's preparation and then there's just kind of going the extra mile that that seems to be successful. And then the other thing is that you know, uh, I've been fortunate that I've seen, and if I'm not trying a case against another lawyer, but if there's a lawyer in town that, is well known and well respected, and I'm not just to go in and watch them and say, this is something that, I could think about with my own practice. And so it's not only reading, but it's also going out and experiencing people, lawyers who I've seen some of the top lawyers in the United States. And you walk away from that and saying, yeah, I can pick up something from this. This is a unique way of looking at the law. Uh, so I've been fortunate with that.
Always learning.
Well, you hope so. you know, you know, I hope my opinions have changed over the years. I'd be a pretty dull person if I believed the same thing now that I did 40 years ago.
Yes, sir. And speaking of changes, you've witnessed firsthand over the 50 years that you've been practicing that the legal field has changed dramatically since you started practicing, from technology to client expectations to courtroom procedures. What changes stand out to you the most, and how have you adapted, very importantly?
Well, this sounds very negative about the practice. When I first started, I saw a little more professionalism. Uh, it was no question great advocacy and was not leaving anything on the table for the client. Today, it's uh, the concept of we can bully somebody into something, or that somehow is a unique way of doing it. Uh, and that's just it's disrespectful to the court. It's disrespectful to the other person, and so that professionalism is not what it was before. And I don't want to sound like the guy who said, hey, get off my lawn, but we have lost something like that. And the other thing is that COVID has had a huge impact, I think, on the practice, because for 2 years uh, people who were associates just coming out, you know they were isolated. They didn't have the benefit that I had, which was in an early age to walk down the hall and go to a senior lawyer and say, hey, I've got this case in front of the judge. What does he or she look like? How would you approach it? That, and a firm develops a reputation, whether good or bad or whatever it was, or aggressive, not aggressive. You don't have that camaraderie if you're not in the actual office on a 7 day or 6 day a week basis. And I feel sorry for the lawyers who came in that COVID age, because they were really a lot on their own. And so they're not, it's just different practice now.
I understand, and I'm glad that you did mention that, which segues perfectly to my next question. For the younger lawyers listening in who might hope to have a career as distinguished as yours, what are some pieces of advice that you would offer?
Well, I think it's try and be open. Uh, sometimes somebody will say something and you think, boy, that's really off the wall. And then you start thinking about it and saying, yeah, well, maybe there's a point to that. It's you've got to be open for things. And, technology is something that's always going to be there. And it's important to get on top of how can you take advantage of that? And is this going to be, something that I can use? I mean, from as little as what's the most recent software that I can use for a demonstration during a deposition that kind of wows somebody, or even making a presentation to a client. You walk in and you've got something, and they're saying, "Yeah, he's okay, this," but he's up on the technology, and the lawyers that are coming out now have such a great advantage because they're so used to a computer. It's second nature to them. I've where people in my generation, we kind of had to struggle a bit. I mean, I was fortunate. I had a computer, we had DOS, and I taught myself that. But you've got to be up on the technology and it's so fast moving. I mean, you see this, not only in the legal profession, but in the medical profession. And you've got to be able to tie into what's going on in any particular area. Uh, the great thing about a trial lawyer is that you can really learn an awful lot about what you're trying, and you might not have the whole picture, but if you've got a really good view of what that client does, and the thing that just popped into my mind is that one of the things that I don't know if I was told this, but actually going to the client's location, whether it's a manufacturing plant or just see how they operate. I mean, you get such an insight as to uh, how a client is. I mean, and how he interacts or she interacts, and sometimes it explains, well, was the client really on board with or knew what was going on? And you're thinking, well, that's his or her business. She should have been. But all of a sudden, you go to the office, and he or she is inundated with phone calls and people walking in all the time. And you see, it puts them into perspective. You get a sense of what that human being is like and what he or she's daily problems are, and how that affects them. And that helps you when you shape your theory as to how you're going to prosecute or defend that client.
Yes, sir. I've heard that before. I've interviewed a trial attorney here in New York, and he said the same thing that the younger guys have an advantage with the technology, but they lack when it comes to communication. So, like you said, they should get out there, they should meet the clients, and it will foster their ability to communicate better. And I wanted to ask, outside the courtroom, what keeps you inspired or grounded after decades in a demanding profession?
Well, I guess we could all do a better job of having another life and exercising that. So, something as simple as playing golf to me is really enjoyable. But something other than is to kind of giving back to the community, even at a really low level of things, whether it's going to a food pantry, which we have here in St. Charles, and packing up food for people, or now it, the thing that I'm kind of going into now is, especially with this is an open period for the Social Security, and just going in and saying, here, these people come in and say, gee, I've got, what about my drug prescription plan? Should I change that, or should I take Medicare Advantage? And just, there are tools out there that can help them make logical decisions. So right now, that's kind of what I'm doing for the next month and a half while this is what we call the Wild West time, when you can change programs with Social Security. So, and that's of interest. And it's meeting just really nice people. I mean, and it's renewed your sense of what the community is. So.
Yes, sir. I love that answer. Finally, for those listening in that are interested in contacting you, what's the best way to do so? Through your phone number, your website?
It's 630-584-5555. And my cell phone, if you can't reach me, it's 312-316-6703. Feel free to call, anytime. I always tell the story that my wife is used to late phone calls because when we were first married, get a phone call and say, "Hey, I just got arrested. It's 1:30 in the morning. Can you come down?" So I've been used to that from the start. I first started practicing. So
I love it. Tom, it's been a real privilege to hear your reflections. I really love your perspective, decades of experience in courtrooms and across many jurisdictions, your evolution from partner to founder, and obviously your steadfast commitment to excellence and justice in all facets of your work. I really want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your story.
no, thank you, Saul. It was great they reached out to contact me. I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to the Top Attorneys Podcast. The Top Attorneys celebrates the achievements of leading attorneys across the nation. To be featured, send a message or visit www.topattorneys.us.